Respect is not something we can demand, it is something we must inspire. Yet, far too often, we sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. There are invisible forces within us, habits so deeply ingrained that they erode the foundation of the respect we seek from others. Imagine a sculptor carefully chiseling a masterpiece, only to strike it with reckless blows. This is what we do when we allow destructive behaviors to persist. Today, we will uncover 6 habits that silently steal respect and corrode the dignity we aim to project. These are not just external acts, they are reflections of inner turmoil, unchecked emotions, and a lack of mastery over the self. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Strength, my friends, is the precursor to respect. We are about to embark on a journey, one that is dark, profound, and deeply personal. Each habit we discuss is a chain that binds us to mediocrity, and with each revelation, we will learn how to break free and embody the fortitude of a true Stoic. Habit 1. The need for constant validation. The first habit that erodes respect is the relentless and insatiable need for external validation. We have all felt it, the subtle, almost imperceptible pull towards seeking approval, whether it's through a compliment, a like on social media, or simply the praise of others. This craving, though it may appear harmless on the surface, is the first chain that binds us to a life of weakness, dependence, and mediocrity. It reflects a deep insecurity within, an unspoken belief that our worth is not inherent, but must be earned through the approval of others. The moment we look to the world for validation, we relinquish control over ourselves, becoming puppets to the opinions of others. A Stoic, however, does not seek validation outside themselves. A Stoic knows that to chase external praise is to chase fleeting shadows that have no substance. Seneca, the great Stoic philosopher, once warned us, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." This speaks to the fear that drives us to seek approval. Fear of rejection, fear of inadequacy, fear of being ignored. But if we live by the constant need for validation, we are forever trapped in the whims of the world, unable to stand firmly in our own worth. In contrast, the Stoic understands that true validation lies within our own actions, our own choices, and our own alignment with what is virtuous. It is not the applause that matters, but the courage to act in accordance with what we know to be right, regardless of whether it is recognized by others. This is the mark of someone who respects themselves and, in turn, commands respect. The moment we seek validation from others, we expose our vulnerability. We make ourselves dependent on forces beyond our control, and that dependency undermines our strength. The Stoic recognizes that it is not the opinions of others that shape us, but our own actions and thoughts. In our actions, we demonstrate our integrity, our discipline, and our fortitude. These are the qualities that truly earn respect, not because they are acknowledged by the outside world, but because they reflect our inner strength and self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, taught us that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When we free ourselves from the need for approval, we begin to act not to please, but because we know it is right. This is not to say that we abandon the importance of connection or that we should disregard feedback from others. But the Stoic stands firm in their self-respect, choosing to act not out of a desire to be validated, but because they are guided by an unwavering sense of what is virtuous. Only then can we earn true respect, not as a byproduct of external validation, but as a result of our own self-mastery. When we act without the need for validation, we embrace our authentic self, unshackled from the chains of approval, free to make decisions based on our own values and principles. In this freedom, we find our true strength. Respect does not come from the applause of others, but from the quiet, internal resolve that guides every action, every thought, and every word. The Stoic does not look outward for validation. They find it within themselves. Habit 2. The fear of conflict. The second habit that robs us of respect is the irrational fear of conflict. Many avoid confrontation at all costs, not because they are peaceful by nature, but because they fear the discomfort it brings. Whether it's avoiding difficult conversations, suppressing honest feelings, or tiptoeing around someone's ego, this avoidance reflects a fundamental weakness, an inability to stand firm in the face of opposition. A Stoic, however, embraces conflict as a natural part of life and growth. To fear conflict is to fear the truth. The Stoics understood that life is full of challenges, disagreements, and trials. It is in these moments that we are tested. Marcus Aurelius spoke of the necessity of embracing adversity. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Conflict, whether internal or external, is not something to fear or avoid, but something to face head-on with courage and self-control. In the face of conflict, we find an opportunity to demonstrate our resolve, our integrity, and our ability to remain unshaken by the chaos around us. The Stoic does not run from uncomfortable situations. Instead, they approach them with clarity, reason, and composure. They understand that avoiding conflict only prolongs the inevitable, and that suppressing the truth does nothing but breed resentment. The fear of conflict is, at its core, a fear of rejection, of not being liked, of not being accepted. But the Stoic knows that to live authentically, we must be willing to confront the uncomfortable truths of life. It is essential to remember that conflict does not always mean aggression. The Stoic approach to conflict is rooted in calmness, respect, and the pursuit of truth. It is not about winning, but about understanding and growing. Epictetus taught us that wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. This applies not only to material wealth, but to the way we approach life itself. The Stoic seeks only what is necessary. And in the realm of conflict, what is necessary is the truth, no matter how uncomfortable. When we fear conflict, we essentially hand over our power to others. We allow them to shape our reality, our decisions, and our sense of self-worth. By avoiding confrontation, we make ourselves weak, dependent on the approval and comfort of others. But when we face conflict with courage and clarity, we assert our autonomy. We prove that we are not swayed by external opinions or fears. We stand firm, grounded in our own understanding of what is right and just. This is how respect is earned, not through submission, but through the quiet strength that comes from facing conflict with wisdom and resolve. The Stoic does not fear the storm. They know that conflict is an inevitable part of life, and they embrace it with a calm and steady heart. In doing so, they not only demonstrate their own inner strength, but inspire the respect of others. For there is no greater sign of fortitude than standing tall in the midst of opposition. Habit 3. The slave to emotions. The third habit that destroys respect is our enslavement to emotions. We are all familiar with the rush of anger, the pang of jealousy, the weight of despair. These emotions, though they are part of our human experience, must not be allowed to govern our actions. A person who is ruled by their emotions is a person who is unpredictable, volatile, and weak. When we allow ourselves to be slaves to these transient feelings, we lose control over our lives and our sense of self. The Stoic, however, seeks to master their emotions, not suppress them. They understand that emotions are natural reactions to external events, but they are not the measure of how we should behave. Epictetus said, "We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens." It is not the anger, fear, or sorrow itself that causes us to lose control. It is our failure to examine and direct these emotions that leads to destruction. Emotions are not inherently bad. They become dangerous only when they are allowed to dictate our actions without reason. Consider a moment when anger overtakes us. In that moment, we are no longer in control. We lash out, we say things we regret, and we allow our inner chaos to dictate the course of events. But the Stoic does not succumb to this rage. Instead, they pause, they reflect, they allow their rational mind to take control. By stepping back from the emotional surge, the Stoic creates space between stimulus and response. They choose their response based on what is right, not on how they feel in the moment. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic leaders, taught, "When you are distressed by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." The Stoic does not allow their judgments to be clouded by emotions. They recognize that all emotions are transient, like clouds passing through the sky. And just as the sky remains unchanged by the passing clouds, so too does the Stoic remain unshaken by the emotional turmoil that others might succumb to. This mastery over emotion does not mean becoming cold or indifferent. It means understanding that our emotions do not define us. It is our responses that define our character. To lose control of our emotions is to lose control of our lives. But when we master our emotional reactions, we regain control over ourselves, and in doing so, we earn the respect of those around us. Respect is born of stability, the calm center in the midst of chaos. The Stoic, who masters their emotions, becomes an immovable pillar, a source of strength for themselves and others. When we act in harmony with our rational mind, not our fleeting emotions, we become the architect of our destiny. We are not tossed by the waves of anger or fear. We sail through them with the steady hand of a Stoic. In this mastery, we not only find peace, but we inspire respect. For others will see in us the quiet strength that comes from an unwavering self-discipline. Habit 4. The addiction to comfort. The fourth habit that destroys respect is the addiction to comfort. We live in a world that constantly tempts us to seek ease and pleasure, to avoid discomfort at all costs. From the soft bed we lie in at night to the fast food we indulge in during the day, comfort surrounds us, encouraging us to become weak, complacent, and passive. The Stoic, however, embraces discomfort, for it is through discomfort that we build strength, resilience, and character. Seneca, in his writings, warned us against the pursuit of comfort. No man is free who is not master of himself. True freedom, according to the Stoics, comes not from the avoidance of discomfort, but from the ability to endure it without losing our composure. Comfort lulls us into a false sense of security, making us believe that we are entitled to ease and convenience. But the moment we become addicted to comfort, we begin to shrink from the challenges that life presents, and in doing so, we rob ourselves of the opportunity to grow. The Stoic knows that life is filled with hardship, and it is through hardship that we cultivate strength. We do not become stronger by seeking comfort, but by choosing to face adversity head-on. This could mean waking up earlier than we'd like, enduring physical exertion, or engaging in uncomfortable conversations. It could mean choosing the harder path, the one that challenges us to grow, instead of the easy path that allows us to remain stagnant. Comfort breeds mediocrity, while discomfort breeds excellence. When we choose discomfort, we strengthen our willpower, our self-discipline, and our character. We become less reliant on external sources of pleasure and more reliant on our own inner strength. The Stoic is not afraid of discomfort. They seek it out, knowing that in the fire of hardship, they will be forged into something greater. By rejecting the addiction to comfort, we build the fortitude to face any challenge, no matter how difficult. We learn to live with less, to endure more, and to find satisfaction not in the fleeting pleasures of life, but in the knowledge that we are living in accordance with our highest values. This is the essence of Stoic discipline, and when we live with this discipline, we earn respect, not because we seek it, but because we have shown the world that we are unshaken by the forces that seek to weaken us. Habit 5. The habit of complaining. The fifth habit that robs us of respect is the tendency to complain. Complaints are the language of the weak and helpless. They are the cries of those who have abandoned their power, those who have chosen to focus on the injustices and discomforts of life instead of embracing their responsibility to change what they can. We all face hardships. This is inevitable. But the Stoic knows that complaining is not only futile, but it also erodes our dignity. When we complain, we reveal to the world that we believe we are victims of circumstance, incapable of shaping our own fate. As Epictetus wisely said, it's not what happens to you but how you react to it that matters. The Stoic recognizes that life is full of challenges, and they embrace these challenges with resolve and clarity. Complaining does not change anything. It only reinforces our powerlessness. It is a form of surrender, a refusal to take ownership of our own lives. When we complain, we focus on the external events that we cannot control, instead of turning our attention inward to how we can respond in a way that aligns with our values. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, obstacles are not meant to be complained about, but to be overcome. When we face adversity, it is not our role to bemoan our fate, but to confront it with wisdom, courage, and the strength to act. Complaining only serves to weaken our resolve and undermine our capacity for growth. The Stoic sees challenges as opportunities to test our strength, to refine our character, and to demonstrate our resilience. They know that the path of virtue is not a smooth one, but one fraught with obstacles. But instead of complaining, they choose to act, to move forward, and to transform adversity into a tool for personal development. By doing so, they earn the respect of others, not through their complaints, but through their unshakable commitment to persevere in the face of hardship. When we stop complaining, we reclaim our power. We cease to be victims of circumstances and become active participants in our own lives. Complaints are a sign of weakness, but the person who faces life with dignity, without whining or blaming others, commands respect. The Stoic does not focus on what is wrong in the world, they focus on what they can do right. In this mindset, respect is not something they beg for. It is something they naturally inspire through their actions and their ability to rise above the noise of complaints. Habit 6, the refusal to take responsibility. The sixth and final habit that undermines respect is the refusal to take responsibility for one's life. This habit is perhaps the most corrosive, for it not only weakens our character, but also diminishes our ability to create meaningful change. When we refuse to take responsibility, we relinquish our power. We become passive observers of our own lives, blaming external factors, society, family, circumstances, for the way we are, rather than taking ownership of our actions, decisions, and growth. The Stoic, however, understands that true freedom lies in accepting responsibility for everything that happens to us. As Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen more than we speak." The Stoic takes full ownership of their life, knowing that only through responsibility can they shape their destiny. It is easy to blame others or external circumstances when life doesn't go our way, but this is the path of the weak and complacent. The Stoic does not look outward for excuses, but inward for solutions. Taking responsibility means acknowledging that we are the architects of our own fate. If we fail, it is our failure, not someone else's. If we succeed, it is because of our own effort, our own choices. The Stoic does not fall into the trap of blaming others for their misfortunes. They see obstacles as opportunities to learn, grow, and improve. By embracing responsibility, we embrace the power to change. We understand that everything, our actions, our thoughts, our reactions, are within our control. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, emphasized the importance of accepting responsibility when he said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When we take responsibility for our thoughts, for how we react to the world, we begin to take control of our life. We stop being passive spectators and become active participants. We stop waiting for the world to change and start changing ourselves. Respect is not something that is granted by others. It is something we earn through our actions, our integrity, and our willingness to take full responsibility for our lives. When we refuse to take responsibility, we strip ourselves of our power. But when we embrace it, we unlock our true potential, and in doing so, we command respect. For there is no greater sign of strength and maturity than the ability to stand tall, face our shortcomings, and take responsibility for the life we have created. The Stoic knows that by taking responsibility for their actions, they take charge of their future. They are not swayed by the opinions of others, nor are they burdened by the weight of excuses. They live with the understanding that their life is their own, and it is only through their own choices and actions that they can shape it. And in this mastery of self, they inspire the deepest respect. Respect earned through the unwavering commitment to live with honor, integrity, and responsibility. To walk the path of respect is not an easy journey, and it is one that many shy away from. It is not for the faint-hearted. It requires us to step out of the shadows of our weaknesses and step into the light of discipline and fortitude. The 6 habits we've discussed, avoiding conflict, being slaves to emotions, seeking comfort, complaining, and refusing to take responsibility, are not merely inconveniences or habits we can brush aside. They are deep-rooted behaviors that define how we experience the world and ultimately how others experience us. The reason these habits are so destructive is simple. They keep us from growing. They make us passive observers in our own lives, and when we live as passive observers, we rob ourselves of our agency, our autonomy, and our respect. These habits are a reflection of a mindset that believes comfort is the goal, that emotions are uncontrollable, and that conflict should be avoided. But Stoicism teaches us that true growth comes from facing discomfort, that emotions must be examined and mastered, and that conflict is a necessary part of life. The Stoic approach is radical in its simplicity. To transform our lives, we must begin by transforming our habits. We cannot control the external world, but we can control how we respond to it. We cannot avoid discomfort, but we can choose how to face it. We cannot avoid conflict, but we can choose how to engage with it. We cannot avoid hardship, but we can choose to grow through it. The Stoic approach is not about eliminating challenges. It's about rising above them with grace, integrity, and wisdom. Each of us has the power to break free from these destructive habits. It requires us to step out of the comfort of our daily routines and embrace the discomfort of self-discipline. It requires us to examine our emotions and develop the courage to face them, not with avoidance, but with understanding and control. It requires us to take full responsibility for our lives, for our actions, and for the way we interact with the world. And it requires us to stop complaining about what we cannot change and start taking action in the areas where we can make a difference. The path to respect is paved with self-control, self-awareness, and a commitment to living in alignment with our values. Respect is not something that is handed to us on a silver platter. It is something that we must earn through our actions, through the way we live, and through the way we hold ourselves accountable. When we stop avoiding conflict, when we stop letting our emotions control us, when we stop seeking comfort at the cost of our growth, when we stop complaining about what is wrong in our lives, and when we stop refusing to take responsibility for the outcomes of our actions, we begin to live with a sense of purpose. Respect will follow naturally, because respect is not earned through force or manipulation. It is earned through authenticity, through strength, through the courage to face life with dignity. We are not perfect, and we will make mistakes along the way. But what defines us is not the mistakes we make, but the way we choose to rise after we fall. Every time we face an obstacle, we are given an opportunity to prove our character. Every time we confront discomfort, we build resilience. Every time we refuse to complain and take responsibility instead, we build the foundation of a life worthy of respect. So, the choice is yours. Will you continue to live in the shadows of these habits, letting them dictate your life? Or will you step into the light of Stoicism, embracing the challenges and discomforts of life as tools for growth? The Stoic path is one of strength, but it is also one of humility and self-awareness. It is not about perfection, but about the unwavering commitment to improve every day, to become better, stronger, and more virtuous with each passing moment. When you choose the path of Stoicism, you choose to live a life of integrity, a life of purpose, and a life that commands respect, not by force, but by the quiet, unwavering strength of character. Now that you've learned how to transform the habits that steal your respect and break free from the chains that bind you, it's time to take action. The path of Stoicism is not one you can walk in a single day, but every step you take brings you closer to the person you were meant to become. The world will test you, people will challenge you, but your strength lies in how you respond. Will you continue to let destructive habits control your life? Or will you embrace the power of Stoicism and transform your destiny? If you found value in this video, don't just sit back, take action. Like this video, subscribe to The Modern Stoic for more powerful insights on how to transform your life through Stoic wisdom, and leave a comment below with one action you're going to take to break free from these habits. Remember, you are the architect of your own life, and by taking responsibility now, you're taking the first step towards a future of respect, strength, and unwavering fortitude. Join us on this journey to greatness. Together, we can build a life that commands respect, not because of what we say, but because of who we are.